Hello and welcome. What we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be looking at how to find some ideas which you can write about in your story. I've been teaching writing for a long time. It's one of the things that particularly get asked about creative writing is I can't come up with ideas. I sit there thinking about them and not knowing what to do. So what we're going to go through today is go through the steps of getting to your first sentence, as in coming up with your ideas, being able to explore them and finding a simple way to be able to have a story which is ready-made for any kind of scenario. So the first way to do this is to go through the main types of storytelling, and that's what we'll be going through in a moment, is going through various methods of telling a story and the sorts of things that are at the heart of virtually every story that you see. Now the reason why we do that is once you know what you should be looking for, it's much easier to come up with an idea which is based on that particular method of storytelling. It's something where you can take a very generic idea and turn it into something special. And we'll go through that process as well. Now, the thing that's very important first and foremost is that your story ideas don't actually have to be complex. And particularly when you're writing short stories, which is what you will be doing, you don't want your ideas to be too complex anyway. Because the thing is, if you've got a 5-page epic where you go from one side of the world to another, you're not going to be spending a lot of time really exploring it in detail, and you're really not going to get a very deep story out of it. To have a very generic and very small and simple idea, which doesn't really extend a whole lot, you're actually able to focus more on techniques such as emotional language, description, sensory language, being able to make it more psychological, more satirical, funnier, all those things. It's able to bring out your personality a lot more, and that's what you're mainly focusing on. But we'll go through the idea of storytelling as well. We'll be looking at not only coming up with simple ideas, but how to make them your own, how to turn an inspiration into a story idea. To take an image like that and sort of go, how do I turn this now into a story? Let's have a look at some basic story types first. All stories in essence are either a conflict, story about resistance, or an anecdotal story. We're going to be mainly focusing on the first two. Anecdotal stories are good, but don't really go into a lot of depth. Whereas the first two, you can get a lot of depth out of those kinds of stories. So we'll be mainly focusing on those. Conflict stories are probably the more common ones you come across, which is conflict between self or others, between groups, or between a person and the world around them. Conflict comes with the nature of people wanting different things. And as I said, it's not conflict as in this specific word. It's a very, very broad definition. Conflict can be simple as people disagreeing with each other. Or a conflict can be as simple as one group of people wanting one thing and another group of people wanting another. And these are story elements which are very simple. You can have two simple characters and then you can really build a deep story around this idea of conflict. All stories, as I said, will have some element of conflict in them. Whether or not it be a conflict, as I said, between man and the world or man and nature, that's still a conflict. It's still a person trying to do something or trying to strive to achieve something. Similarly, you can look at this as a resistance type of story. So a person facing obstacles and reaching a goal, or people surviving. Resistance is essentially the will of people to survive and to get what they want. These sorts of stories, ones which can be explored with a lot of depth, they're very, very simple in their premise. They can be done in such a way where they really do tell a lot and they really go into some deep ideas and themes. Of course, if you want to have a look at anecdotal, and we'll go through it as well, there's stories about people and there are stories about the world, and there are stories about specific people. They're a description about someone or something, and that's why I said before about them not having a lot of depth, mainly because they rely on narration. They rely on telling you a lot about them. And they rely on telling you a lot of the details of the story, which is all well and good if you have a bit of personality and you use it well, but they are quite risky, and particularly you get a lot more depth out of a conflict story or a resistance story, and you can do the same sorts of things. You can be funny in those stories. You can be funny in a story about conflict, just the same way as you can be sad. You can write a horror story based on conflict. You can open up any genre of writing, the two main ideas of conflict and resistance, and certainly you can tell a lot through just anecdotal stories as well.